David Bruns, you're up next. David Bruns.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Bruns. I'm a science fiction fantasy writer from down Shakopee Way. I've been working for the last year on a science fiction fantasy series called The Dream Guild Chronicles. The first book in the series is over there on the table. Today I'm going to read from a short story that I released a couple of weeks ago. It's Amish science fiction time travel spy story. I'll read the first part. It's called The Yesterday Adjustment. Agent Strickland. The voice came at him from very far away, like someone calling to him from the mouth of the tunnel. He ignored it. Damien, came the voice again, sharper this time. He recognized the voice now, ancient and rusty with age, but tough as steel underneath. Give him a stiff shot, said the old voice. Damien felt a prick on his shoulder and his eyes snapped open of their own accord. He shaded his face from the harsh lights of the operating room. The back of his head hurt like hell and his right elbow was numb. He sat up slowly and swung his legs to the floor so he could face his boss. If you met Richards on the street, you'd think she was someone's grandmother. Gray-haired with soft, papery skin, she barely came up to Damien's shoulder, but looks were deceiving. With hundreds of covert operatives at her disposal and unlimited funds, Richards was probably the most dangerous person in all of transport. The rheumy eyes that glared up at him were hard and all business. Do I have your attention now, Agent? Damien nodded, trying to ignore the pain in the back of his head. His eyes strayed to what looked like a bloody spider in a stainless steel operating tray behind her. So that's what a bison looked like. His hand automatically went to the back of his head to feel for the seams underneath his hairline. There, his fingers traced little ridges of raised scar tissue. He tried to connect to the internet mentally. Nothing, just blankness. Did that come out of me, Damien asked, pointing at the vice unit. Richards huffed and whirled on the doctor. What have you done to my agent? The doctor cowered under her stormy gaze. It's just the effects of the anesthesia wearing off. We normally let patients come out of it on their own, but you... Oh, shut up, Richards said. The doctor's jaw snapped shut. She turned back to Damien. Her voice lowered an octave, and she really did sound like a grandmother for a moment. Listen to me, Agent. Damien. She gave him a wide smile and placed a hand on his knee. I need you to focus. Let's talk through this together, shall we? Damien nodded. He could feel his mind starting to clear, his senses getting sharper by the minute. Richards patted his knee. Good, yes, that is your bison plan. You are now disconnected from the internet, but we downloaded everything you need to know for your mission before we took it out. Now, do you remember what your mission is, Damien? Damien crunched his brow together. He was getting a picture. People driving buggies with horses, all dressed in plain clothes, the women in bonnets, the men in straw hats, working in fields. Amish, he said. It has something to do with the Amish. He heard the doctor let out a big sigh and Richard squeezed his knee. Good, she said. Good boy. And then, like someone had just switched on a light in a dark room, Damien was back. The moment snapped into place and he knew where he was. Transport headquarters, portal prep deck. He sat up straighter, then moved Richards' hand off his leg. Really, Richards, you're not my type, he said with a smile. That's enough, Agent. I was trying to be compassionate. Maybe you can stop digging around and get down the wardrobe. She tried to slap him, but he ducked away. Damien, clad only in his boxer shorts, strode out of the operating room. Save that vice unit for me, Doc. I want to reimplant it as soon as I get back. Richard followed in his wake. Since you were catching up on your beauty sleep in there, we're behind schedule. So we're going to do the briefing on the run, Richard said from behind him. The lack of a constant internet connection in his head was disconcerting, almost lonely. Whatever, he muttered, and he turned into a door-marked wardrobe. The girl who waited for him was covered in tattoos and piercings poked out of her lip, nose, and eyebrow. Maddie, babe, what's the latest in fashion in the Amish world 50 years ago? Maddie's piercings glinted when she smiled. You're going to love it, Damien. She pointed to the dressing room. He shut the door behind him, but Richards opened it and crowded it next to him. Richards, what the hell? Can't a man have any privacy? You'll get privacy when I get my briefing. She paused and a slow smile crept across her face. Besides, I want to see the look on your face when you see your costume. Richards turned to the bench where his mission clothes were laid out. He picked up the pants, rough spun cloth with pockets sewn on, appropriately aged, a cotton shirt with a pair of suspenders, a worn pair of heavy work boots with thick woolen socks and a broad-brimmed hat to complete the ensemble. He thought of his closet back at home full of fine suits and silk ties, the best clothes money could buy. He sighed and picked up the pants. Oh, not so fast, big guy. Richard's smile turned into a wicked grin as she pushed the door open so Maddie could watch. The underwear comes off. You're going commando. What? Amish people don't wear underwear? Maddie answered, research failed me, Damien. She put her hands in the air, but her smile told him she was enjoying this. They were unable to give me specs for Amish undergarments. We can't let you wear future-style underwear, so the next best thing is nothing at all. Fine. Damien yanked down his shorts in front of both women. Neither flinched. He pulled on the pants, the rough cloth rubbing against the bare skin of his privates. Satisfied? All right, Richard said, the smile fading from her face. Enough fun and games. I need to hear your mission brief, now. She shooed Maddie out of the door, and shooed Maddie out of the room and closed the door. Damien knew Richard's moves better than most, and he assumed a professional tone. Mission Charlie X-Ray Delta 5, historical intervention, classification T5, person to person. Richards nodded. Continue. T5 was the highest security level in the entire transport organization, and person to person meant the mission could not be disclosed by any means other than face-to-face communications. Richard's face had assumed a neutral look, but her voice gave away the tension she undoubtedly felt. Small wonder, this mission was probably the most important mission in the history of transport, maybe in the history of the world. If he succeeded, when he succeeded, Trace, the rebels, would all be gone, as if they'd never happened. In theory, Damien's mission was simple. Go back in time and interrupt a historical event, changing the future timeline. In practice, it was much harder. How could a person change an event without creating unintended, maybe worse consequences? Change too much and maybe he could wipe out all of mankind. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Transport was losing the war. Trace, despite the government news broadcast to the contrary, was winning and winning big. They had succeeded in pushing transport back beyond the shelf. Sure, transport won a battle here and there. They even managed to hack Trace's systems for about a day, but they were losing all the same. And Damien could fix all that in one mission. Historians call it an inflection event, a fancy term for a turning point in history where the momentum shifted from one side to the other. In modern history, the inflection event for the ascendance of Trace rebel movement was a skirmish in Columbia, Maryland, shortly after the Second Transport War. The rebels had captured a portal, one of the first in existence, and realized the scope of what transport had done to the population. Prior to that, Trace had been a loose coalition of disaffected rebels, but after the battle, they were transformed into a force to be reckoned with. It had been an uphill battle for transport ever since. Richards interrupted his thought. Agent Strickland, continue, please. Damien fastened the suspenders on his trousers. Mission objective is to infiltrate the community living in the Pennsylvania Amish zone and make sure that I'm part of the group that delivers food to Columbia. The tricky part of the mission was how little they knew about the inflection event. The victor's right to history was what one of the historians who briefed him had said. Trace had won that battle, and as a consequence, transport knew almost nothing about what really happened. Basically, all they knew was that the Amish were involved somehow. They had delivered food to the Columbia checkpoint where the portal was housed, and a rebel attack happened around the same time. Did the Amish support the Trace rebels, or were they just innocent bystanders? No one, at least no one in transport, knew that answer. To ensure the rebel attack is stopped by whatever means necessary. Failing that, I destroy the portal so it doesn't fall into enemy hands. Richard seemed to read his thoughts. Look, you have the ability to change the course of transport history for the better. I cannot overemphasize the need for finesse here, Damien. The scope of your intervention needs to be very limited. You get the Amish to get you inside the base, and you make sure transport retains control of the portal. You will undoubtedly see other opportunities to change the future. Ignore them. The risk of unintended consequences is too great. I understand, Richards. She looked at him for a long moment before nodding. Let's go. Damien followed her across the hall to the door marked armament. Remus waited for them, a big smile on his face. On the table in front of him lay a folded knife, its handle about 4 inches long. There you go, Damien, he said. Damien waited for the punchline. Remus loved the joke, but he always outfitted him with the best weapons in the end. He hefted the knife and snapped open the blade. He tested it with his thumb. Nice, he said. What's the secret? No secrets on this mission, buddy. It's just a knife. Damien looked at Richard, who shook her head. That's it. We can't risk future technology getting into the wrong hands. He let out a long breath. They were sending him into an unknown situation against well-armed assailants with a freaking pocket knife and no underwear. He forced a smile. I guess I'll just have to win them over with my charming personality. Remus stood and held out his hand. Good luck, Damien. For some reason, the jester gave Damien a choking feeling. Thanks, he said, grasping the offered hand. Remus had no idea what Damien's mission was, but both men knew that Richards didn't send agents out unarmed without a damn good reason. Richards checked her watch. If you two girls are done hugging it out, we have an appointment to keep. Damien forced a chuckle as he followed Richards back into the hallway. She walked at a fast clip to the massive steel door at the end of the hall. Damien waited while she did the retina scan, DNA verification, and security code. The door made a clunking noise that he felt under his feet, then slid aside. The high ceilings in the room made the space seem bigger than it actually was. Richard's heels clicked on the floor as they approached the portal. The portal itself always struck Damien as anticlimactic. Basically, it was a couple of long-haired guys grouped around the computer workstation and a big steel door frame, like the entrance to an old-time bank hall. The bigger of the two, his name was Chad, nodded as they entered. He straightened up and pulled his shirt down so that it covered his belly. Are we on schedule, Richard said to Chad. Chad nodded. Yes, Chief. She waved her hands. Let's get on with this then. Chad gave his ponytail a tug and rubbed his hands together. All right, Damien, couple of things. First, when you see the old-time portal, it won't look anything like this. It'll look gnarly. Picture coils of wire wrapped around the door frame and a huge computer, like maybe the size of this room attached to it. You have an implant on your right elbow. That's your way home, man. Once you do the deed, you use that baby to portal back to our time. Check it out. Damien looked at his elbow. A bright blue light glowed from underneath the skin in the crook of his arm. He shot a glance back at Chad. You get that blue light when the implant detects an auxilium-based time warp signature. You pump your arm like this. He extended his arm out straight at the floor. Damien mimicked him and felt a click in his elbow. You feel that? Chad asked. That's the trigger. You do that 3 times, and that arms the device. Don't do it now. It's one-time use only, man. Once it's armed, the implant will glow bright green after it's hijacked whatever portal it's synced up to. Then you have 10 seconds to go through the portal. No second chances, dude. Sorry. Damien absorbed the information. Seems simple enough. Wait for the blue light, pump your arm 3 times, and go on green. He nodded. We're good, Richards asked Chad. We're cool, Chief, came the reply. Start the sequence. Damien knew from experience it took about a minute for the machine to warm up. The familiar feeling of static energy made the hair stand up on the back of his neck. Chad kept his eyes on the screen as he spoke. This is a bigger than normal jump, Damien, so you're going to feel it a lot more than usual. He looked over at Richards and put his thumb in the air. Damien started forward, but Richards held him back. Damien, I can't express to you enough how important this mission is. You need to be extremely careful not to... Richards, we've been through this. I'm ready. She released his arm. Of course you are. Be careful, Agent Strickland. There were 2 steps leading up to the portal. The surface of the doorway shimmered with energy and it sucked in the atmosphere from the room, creating a gentle breeze. The rough cloth of his pants chafed at his crotch, but Damien resisted the urge to scratch himself. The step rang hollow under his work boot. He felt the energy of the portal crawling over his body like thousands of tiny insects. He took a deep breath and he stepped through.